Porsche and Audi are inching closer to confirming Formula 1 entries from 2026, although it seems any commitment will come with a twist. There is a surprise switch from the Volkswagen Group's original desire to have a cost-effective route into Formula 1, with both Porsche and Audi benefiting from an alliance with Red Bull and its fledgling engine division. The VW Group has now vaguely confirmed plans for 2 potential entries. Official details are scarce, but Audi's apparent preference is rather different to what was originally envisioned. A meeting of the VW Group's supervisory board last week concluded without a final decision on whether its Porsche and Audi brands will commit to an F1 project in 2026. But it has confirmed plans for those potential entries, which are subject to a successful final phase of evaluation. It suggests that internally, the organisation has decided how it wants to go about competing in F1. A final decision hasn't been made yet because the 2026 technical regulations have not been fully agreed upon. There is a framework in place already, with several major decisions made months ago. This includes scrapping the MGU-H to simplify the power units and eliminate a large part of the existing manufacturer's advantage because the engines will change significantly. Another agreement was upgrading the MGU-K to increase overall electrical power output from the power unit and make a switch to so-called 100% sustainable fuels. This combination would seem to satisfy Audi's declared prerequisite of far-reaching changes to make F1 more sustainable. Such a public demand follows comments made by Audi board member responsible for technical development Oliver Hoffmann back in March, when he stressed the significance of F1's sustainability push. Details from Porsche and Audi about their programs will probably only come once they are 100% official, but what we've heard about Audi's chosen path is very interesting. Audi's situation has been less clear than Porsche's throughout. However, it's now clear that it wants more than just an engine collaboration. It wants a standalone Audi engine project. That would mean a completely separate commitment to what Porsche is expected to collaborate on with Red Bull. We'll get to the Porsche side of the equation in a moment, but the Audi approach represents a surprise shift in VW's plan. And it seems counterintuitive. 2 in-house brands fighting against each other has actually been done before, in the World Endurance Championship and Formula E, but having 2 in F1 would represent an oddly excessive financial commitment. What was originally viewed as a cost-effective route into F1 by striking a partnership with Red Bull will get significantly more expensive, with 1 external engine collaboration and a separate in-house project. Audi would at least have a logical base to start from on the technical side, because it is expected to pick up the engine design Porsche abandoned when it last examined an F1 entry in 2018. Back then, Porsche had a full V6 being dyno tested and even had initial concepts for an energy recovery system. As F1's internal combustion engine rules have stayed mostly the same, that V6 could be the basis for a 2026 engine. Audi is believed to have already started work on this. Its planned return to the Le Mans 24 Hours is at risk of being completely scrapped after being put on hold, which we understand was to redirect resources to pre-development of the F1 project. But even if Audi does go ahead with building an F1 engine, who would run it? There are 2 ways to go about this: either do a simple engine supply deal like Honda did when it came back into Formula 1 in 2015, or have a team that the manufacturer itself has a stake in. Audi doesn't want to fund the creation of a brand new works team from scratch to run this engine, so if it wants to be more than just an engine supplier, it will have to pay an awful lot of money to get hold of an existing team. McLaren, Williams, Sauber and even Aston Martin, which is sounding increasingly keen on its own engine project, have all been linked to Audi. McLaren and Williams have new investors and owners that are keen to benefit from F1's transition to a championship that gives teams returns on their investments. McLaren and Williams also seem unwilling to cede control, which means Audi may find it difficult at this point to find a team that can give it what it wants for the price it's willing to pay. Sauber has been mentioned in more serious terms in recent weeks. It's a logical choice for a few reasons, mainly its quality facilities, which Audi has actually used before to develop its LMP1 car, and its obvious openness to forego naming rights. Right now, Sauber's racing in F1 as Alfa Romeo, and in the late noughties it was sold to BMW and raced in the German manufacturer's name. But it's worth pointing out that even though Sauber has sold the naming rights to Alfa Romeo, it still owns and controls the team. As for Aston Martin, we've done a video in the past on his interest in a works engine project. Given the investment team owner Lawrence Stroll has put in, with a disappointing return in 2021 and at the start of 2022, finding someone to share the burden in the coming seasons would likely appeal. So as long as there was compatibility on the automotive side, perhaps Aston Martin and Audi could find some common ground. Before we get into the Porsche side of things and the concerns that F1's existing manufacturers have, we wanted to pause to ask a quick favour. We know that talk of a VW Group entry leaves a lot of people rolling their eyes and saying, "I'll believe it when I see it." And we understand, but these discussions are serious and it is looking extremely likely that at least one, if not both brands, will enter F1 in 2026. There's loads more to come on what will be major news for Formula 1, so if you like what we're doing, hit the thumbs up button on this video and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a thing as this story develops. Porsche's situation is currently progressing as it has been expected to for a long time. Like Audi, it is yet to make a final decision with no finalised technical regulations, which are important for Porsche to decide if F1's long-term plan for sustainable technology matches with its own corporate strategy. But Red Bull and Porsche look increasingly likely to partner up for F1's new engine regulations, and Red Bull's sister team AlphaTauri would unsurprisingly use the same engine. We reported as long ago as last September that Porsche could enter F1 alongside Red Bull, which is already preparing for the new rules with its new Red Bull Powertrains facility. Working with Red Bull would make a Porsche entry into F1 more affordable and practical, as they would share the financial burden, and Porsche's contribution on the technical side would likely be fairly limited, at least at first. This logic is why Audi's decision to do its own thing has surprised a few people in the F1 paddock, but we don't need to dwell on that any further for now. There is another potential benefit in a Porsche-Red Bull alliance in that Red Bull's fuel and oil partner ExxonMobil is also a Porsche partner. They even have a new plant in Chile where they are working together on carbon capture technology and sustainable fuels. Back in the UK, Red Bull has been building a new engine headquarters and embarked on a major recruitment drive to staff its own bespoke program that it has always stated did not need an automotive partner. But Red Bull team boss and CEO Christian Horner has admitted it would be natural to hold discussions with the VW Group and says it would be very easy to adjust its plans to work with them. Designing and building its own engines for the first time in its F1 history is a move Red Bull committed to in the wake of Honda's decision to leave F1 officially at the end of 2021. While Red Bull Powertrains is not yet working from its new bespoke campus and no definitive 2026 regulations exist, initial development work on a 2026 power unit has started. And Horner has revealed that Red Bull will have a single-cylinder test engine, a prototype for the new rules, running on the dyno imminently. It was not initially clear what Horner meant by imminently, given that dyno running is not meant to take place before July the 1st. But Horner has also said that a Red Bull engine would run by the end of the year, so maybe he just mixed up his words. A maiden dyno run just over a year on from when work on Red Bull's new facility started would be a significant milestone in its ambitious undertaking. It has given itself more flexibility to handle the challenge of that project by eliminating some short-term additional burdens. The original plan for Red Bull's Honda takeover was for the Japanese manufacturer to look after the building and servicing of its engines in 2022, while Red Bull Powertrains was built up, ready to assume responsibility in 2023. Instead, Honda is continuing to look after Red Bull's engines at its Sakura facility until 2025, effectively operating as a contractor. Red Bull says this separates the Powertrains 2026 project from the 2022 to 2025 engine arrangement, even though the ex-Honda engines do now bear the Red Bull Powertrains name. This is important because it could influence whether Red Bull is entitled to any concessions that are finalised for new engine manufacturers in 2026, with extra dyno time, a higher budget cap, and an allowance for capital expenditure projects. Question marks remain over exactly how a multi-brand engine collaboration would work in practice, So F1's existing manufacturers are keenly awaiting exact details of the Red Bull Porsche project, but also where Audi would fit in and what walls would exist within the VW group. Ferrari, Mercedes and Renault have already agreed to drop the MGUH to facilitate a VW group entry, but they are wary of allowing extra dyno time or financial resources given the extent of the technological change within the new regs and the fact the VW group brands have extensive knowledge of electrical powertrains. This is likely to be a thorny issue when talks take place to nail down the final details of the 2026 regulations, which are hopefully going to be concluded by June. There is a particular concern that if manufacturers must adhere to dyno limits and a budget cap, then some kind of complicated Red Bull Porsche alliance and a separate Audi project could effectively develop an engine while pooling their resources. If Audi ends up running its own engine separately, that will mean knowledge of two different engine projects within the VW group. It has apparently been broadly agreed that keeping intellectual property separate is important to guarantee, but could that be done and could it be policed effectively? Specific restrictions and measures will depend on the exact arrangement the VW group comes to, so like the rest of us, Red Bull's concerned rivals are simply going to have to wait for the final decision.